For over 10 years, I couldn't get my productions to sound how I wanted, so I buried myself in online tutorials trying to figure out why, and even having some of the same tools as other producers and mixers I envied, my productions weren't coming even close. I've heard the term referencing get thrown around, and I thought I was referencing the right way myself, but I was totally wrong, and over time developed a referencing system that would help me produce any desired result. I'm excited to announce that you can now use this same system yourself in our new course, The Magical Guide to Referencing. This gives you the exact framework I've used and successfully taught hundreds of students through the years. If you're ready to stop chasing your mixing tail in circles and ready to understand any mix you hear to replicate those same results for yourself, you can find a link to the Magical Guide to Referencing in the description wherever you're listening. See you there, my friends. Hello and welcome to Working in Music Sucks. My name is John Maciel, and for almost 2 decades I've been working in the audio recording industry. I've worked with producers and mixers like Bo Rochelle, Joey Sturgis, and Josh Newell, and countless others on records with bands like Era, Census Fell, and Moose Blood. And along this journey, I've also worked with 2 of the biggest music educational companies where I helped thousands of aspiring engineers achieve their dreams of making music production a fulfilling full-time career. But as great as that sounds, to be honest, the first 10 years of working in music sucked. I started this podcast to talk about what sucks about working in music so others like myself who love music production and want to wake up every morning fulfilled and driven to making records people love can do just that. Working in music sucks, but with what we talk about on this podcast, it doesn't have to any longer. If that sounds like your cup of coffee, then you're in the right place, my friends. Let's get into it. Welcome, friends, to another episode of the Working in Music Sucks podcast. Today, I want to talk about one of the things that I think everyone in audio and creatives in general all struggle with, and it's a question that is brought up often in any audio group, whether it's on Facebook, in Discord, or on Reddit. And it's the simple question of, how do you make more time for music? That's the question, right? And typically the individuals who are asking this question are people who are working a full-time job, have a family or a significant other. There's a lot of life, work, balance stuff happening. And then they're curious on the steps to introduce their passion, music, and get more time for it so that they can better themselves. It could be, they're trying to be better at writing songs, producing, mixing, or, just their instruments. And I myself have gone through the gauntlet of trying to figure out a system that works. And this episode isn't going to be one of those like productivity, wake up at 5 a.m. type of episodes. Because I truly believe that for most creatives, the 5 a.m. wake up, schedule anything and everything, that's just not real. It's not realistic. I don't believe creatives are 100% programmed to work that way. Like I think anyone who's creative is very, they ride things in waves. And in this episode, I'm going to talk about how to ride those waves, how to figure out how to ride your wave. And hopefully it helps you find more time for music like it did for me. And this is a system that is pretty straightforward. I don't think it's difficult. So first off is we have to find time, right? And often it's like, well, how do you find time when there is none? And this is going to be a little bit of work, the first part, to finding more time to do music and when to schedule it and all that fun stuff. And the first thing that I did personally, and then later on a couple of my friends did it too because they were curious because of my results, was when I was working 9 to 5, like a 9 to 5, and then still was interning, trying to get into the industry when I was in Los Angeles, I was just exhausted when I would get home. Like it would take 30 to 45 minutes in LA traffic in the morning, even though I didn't work that. And honestly, 30 to 45 minutes for considering LA, that's like not even that bad of traffic. But still, every morning there was some sort of traffic. And that's to and from. So that's like an hour of my day. Then I work an 8-hour job. That's 9 hours plus an hour lunch. And there you go. There's 10 hours of my day. And in a 24-hour day, we get 8 to 10 hours of sleep if we're lucky, or 6 to 10. So it's like time's already against me. And
with the little time I did have, once I'd get back, I'd be working on editing and mix prep and whatever else needed to take place. And I considered myself a very, I guess I was very aware. I thought I was very aware of how much time I was spending on, let's say, social media and things like that. And I got curious one day is how can I get more time in my day? Because I have to go to work, so that's a non-negotiable. I have to get these projects done, so that's a non-negotiable. I have to cook, clean, all this other stuff. And I was like looking at my account, like I was looking at my day-to-day, and I was like, okay, first step is figuring out where there are opportunities for me to take advantage of my time. And the first thing I did was I wonder how much time I actually spent on social media. And on my iPhone, and I think on most phones, there's like a tracker that will track per day how much you utilize any social media app or any app in general. And then at the end of the week, you can kind of see how much you spent, how much time accumulated for being on any particular app on your phone. And I did this for 4 weeks without judging. I just like wrote down the time and then forgot about it, put it in my notes, moved on. When it came time to review, I realized that I was using social media platforms on my phone for about 15 to 20 hours a week. Think about that. 15 to 20 hours a week. And that was just on my phone, right? You have to think about when I was on a computer, when I would just randomly do those little, like, I'm going to take a little break, go into Facebook, what's happening. I'm going to go into Instagram, what's happening while on the computer. And I knew that number was probably much higher. And I was shocked personally. I was like, well, how did I waste that time? And I realized that every time I went on one of those, like, I'm going to take a little bit of a break, would turn into 15 to 20 minutes of scrolling and then go back into whatever I was doing and then do it again. And before you know it, on any given app, that adds up for the day. You can quickly get to an hour. So that was the first thing I noticed. And I was like, okay, something needs to change because one, I don't need to be on these social media apps this long. Which one of these apps brings me the most joy and also helps me the most? And I decided, okay, I'm going to give that app, whatever it may be, an hour timer. And on the iPhone, you can set up app timer. So once it hits a certain threshold of time per day, it tells you and you can't use it past that threshold anymore. And I think there's apps that do it as well. So the app I utilize the most would get an hour. Everything else would be on a 10 to 15 minute timer, essentially. And if you ever want to see exactly how much time you waste on any particular app, put on the 10-minute timer and watch how soon that thing goes off when you're using your phone. It's insane how quickly 10 minutes can go by whenever we're using any particular app. And if you think about it, that's 10 minutes that we can allocate towards music. So I gave myself a couple weeks to get used to this new way of using my phone. And then I made a strict rule, no social media on my computer anymore. So I signed out of everything, no passwords saved or anything like that. So on my computer, I cannot log into social media. I can only use it on my phone. It's not on my iPad. It's not anywhere else. It's strictly on my phone. This way, the only way to access it is on my phone. So that was one thing I did. And one way to better utilize social media was to use it on my breaks at work, my lunchtime. But once I was out of work, I did everything in my power to resist using my phone for social media purposes as much as possible. And I know some people I know like to sign out and delete the app. I don't know. To me, I'm like, well, you can just go to the app store. But this was my way of like, okay, once I'm off the clock, this app is off. I am shut off for the day. And there is nothing important on social media happening that if it's so dire, someone that I know won't text me it or tell me about it. That's how I view it. So I was like, okay, there's nothing going on online. So I don't need to be on it all the time. So right there, that was one way to get more time. And I was like, okay, cool. I figured out this step. What was the next thing I can do to really take advantage of this newfound freedom of all this time that I had? And I started asking myself questions like, okay, how can I move things around on my calendar or my day-to-day that can give me more time that is possibly sustainable and isn't something crazy that it's like I'm a machine and I have to get this done, otherwise the whole system falls apart. And I started looking at, like, for example, I would clean my office and everything on a Sunday, but trash didn't come until Thursday. And the reason I did it on Sunday was just because I was like, I wanted to start Monday fresh. But then I started thinking, I was like, well, what if I set up my week so that Thursday I can get all the trash and everything out, because that's when the trash comes anyway, instead of wasting that time on Sundays when I can utilize that time for something different. And I slowly started looking at little things that way that made more sense to just move around on certain days. So like Sunday became prep meal day and gain as much food ready for the week as possible, my lunches. So things I wouldn't have to think about, and I can just like go, right? And I have the time. And moving all these little things around really helped expedite and make more time for things. And I think it's one of those little micro hacks that a lot of people don't think about. We're just constantly in a go state and just trying to get things done as soon as possible, that we don't really slow down to think, okay, when is it best to get these things done? And this is actually something that I noticed that the women in my life who are mothers do often, because when you have 2 or 3 or 4 kids around you, you have to move things around. So it's like, I can knock out this, and this on this day because of this, and this, instead of doing all these back and forths. Like, you don't have time like that. So you have to be really meaningful with the time that you are spending. So that was the next thing that I did. And I really was like, okay, I was really excited that I was getting time back. And at this point, I was like almost 3 or 4 months into this whole this new process of living. So it was becoming very normal for me to not overuse my phone and all these things. And then I started noticing that it was getting, I don't want to say difficult, but my moods would fluctuate based on what I wanted to get done, when I wanted to get things done. And then a friend of mine recommended a book called When, from the author David Pink, and I'll leave a link to it in the show notes. It will be an affiliate link, no cost to you. I get a little bit of a kickback, but the premise of this book was breaking down certain personality types and when is the most opportune time for them to do specific types of tasks based on what their personality traits are. And the book asks you to basically kind of figure out your daily tempo, so to speak. And are you a morning person, afternoon person, or evening person? When is it best for you to do things that are creative? When is it best for you to do things that are administrative? When is it best to do things that literally take up as zero brain RAM as possible? And this was really crucial because, as I mentioned, I was working a 9 to 5, and a lot of aspiring audio engineers have a full-time job, have a significant other, and have a family. And once you go to work, your brain, no matter what job you have, your brain is getting eaten up all day because of tasks and things that you have to do. Something new happens, problem solving. There's just so many things that eat at your brain RAM, as I like to call it. And then when you get off work, even when you have some time to decompress in the car, if you have a significant other or family, it's like you have to be on for them, right? And if you don't, then you just need to chill out for a little bit, right? Just to get back to equilibrium, or maybe that day you had something really difficult at work to deal with and you just need something to cool off. Not all of us can get out of work, go to the gym, and then go out with friends. Like, I've never been programmed like that, and maybe you can relate. And it was really interesting when I read this book, because I started realizing, like, my most it was depending on the season of life or season I was in, my productivity changed, or the best time for me to do certain tasks would change. It wasn't like a fixed, like, only morning, afternoon, evening type thing. And then this isn't just for music. This is also for like, when is it best for you to run errands? When is it best for you to work out? When is it best for you to meal prep? There's different times when your body and your mind and your focus will naturally allow you to do that. And this book really, really helps you figure that out. And I really, really dove into like, okay, what season am I in? When is each thing best for me to do all these different tasks that I need to get done? Am I a nighttime editor, a morning time editor, an afternoon time editor? You just have to figure out when is the most opportune time. Now, I mentioned season of life, and to give you an example, I just got out of like the productive season, which means I was dropping a YouTube video on the main channel every single week for roughly 6 months. Just every single week there was a new video that dropped. And as this was happening, I was like starting to feel like I want to be more creative. I want to analyze what's working and what's not working, instead of just churning out videos like so many other channels. And there's no offense to other channels that just churn out videos. That's their prerogative. That's their goal. That's what they want for themselves. I have certain goals in mind, and those goals I have to really evaluate because I'm only one person. So I have to slow down and be like, okay, if I want this outcome and I'm doing this, what do I need to do to get to this outcome? And I truly believe that sometimes you need to put a pause on things to slow down, reevaluate, change your game plan, and then execute again. So coming out of the production mode or production season, I am like early riser, got to get the videos up, analyze analytics throughout the day, et cetera, et cetera. Right now I'm in preparation season. With preparation season, I need to wake up early. I need to exercise. I need to give my brain some time to get away from all that stuff, to think of fresh new ideas, ideation, write scripts, all that stuff. And now I'm going into the creative season slowly. And that's going to be, filming, editing the videos, getting my buffer space of a couple of videos prepared before launch again. And then I'll go do that cycle all over again. And that is essentially a different season because these are months at a time that I'm doing these things. And I think with audio engineers and people with music, it's this constant, like, I want to just be writing, or mixing. And I don't truly believe that we're 100% programmed to always be in this mindset. Sometimes it's you're busy, so you're mixing, you're doing records, you're getting things done. And I think after that, you need to come out, give yourself a little season of rest and breathe and allow yourself to be re-inspired, to try new things, to figure out new tricks that you have been curious about. Because when you're in production mode, that's not really something you can do. And by knowing when these different tasks are easiest for you to accomplish is incredibly helpful. And another reason this book is great is because if you're a producer or someone who's going to be working with artists, it really helps you identify key characteristics of these personalities, and it helps you know how to get these personalities to mesh well together. So maybe you're a morning person, but your talent is an evening. Where do you find middle ground that works for the two of you? Maybe you got to do afternoon sessions for just the duration of this project so that you are starting early enough to where you can end late enough to where you're comfortable. It's only temporary. And the talent doesn't feel like they're waking up at 7 a.m. when 10, 11 o'clock is pushing it, like waking up for them, And once you understand this and you start seeing these windows, you're like, oh, okay. So this personality between 10 to 12, I'm going to get excellence. After 12, it starts dipping, but it'll come back between 3 and 5, but then they're done for the day. Like I get those 2-hour blocks of awesomeness, but then that's it. And this happens for yourself as well. And I can't recommend the book enough. It was such a great read and really helping me figure out my flow essentially. And another thing I want to talk about when we're finding this time, or we're finding when it's the most opportune moment for us. Actually, 2 more things. The first is when people ask this advice, they often forget that everyone's walk of life is different. Everyone's obligations and demands in life are all going to be different. than the individual who's probably asking the question. So when people say, oh, I do this, this, and this, and this, or this, and this, and this, it may not work always for them. So it's very important to figure out what is the best way for you to do it. And, you can take from everywhere. So like the productivity stuff that I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, there's so much stuff like wake up at 5 a.m., do this at like 5 a.m. and like blocks of time, accomplish so many tasks. And over time, I was like, none of this stuff works for me. But the way my brain works is like, okay, morning is a window of time, afternoon is a window of time, and evening is a window of time. In those windows, I will know I am best to get certain tasks done. So I have a checklist of tasks that need to get done each and every single day of the week, and I will put them accordingly into those buckets, into those windows. And I know that like, okay, as long as I get this stuff in the morning, I'm good, afternoon and evening. And my brain isn't overwhelmed with like, oh, I have to get this thing done in the morning. And I'm not like, I guess I don't become frozen by thinking in terms of like, okay, between 10 and 12, I have to do this one thing. And if I don't, everything goes to hell. And I think so many people get really, I guess, like wound up with that type of mindset, especially if you're creative. So I just highly recommend listen and see what everyone's saying and doing and kind of have self-awareness enough to know like that may or may not work for me and try it. And if it doesn't work, don't feel bad. Throw it out. Not everything needs to work. Now, I want to share this last one that is super important. And when this question is asked, how do you make more time for music? It is often asked in the wrong way. And most people ask this without a goal or some sort of intention in mind. And I think that is the biggest mistake when you're asking this type of question. And what I mean by that is you can't just say, how do I make more time for music? And that's it. Because how are you going to get anything done? How are you going to accomplish any of your goals? So the question should be, how do I make more time to work on my EP because I want to have it released in September? How do I make more time to mix like 5 songs a month? How do I make time for this specific thing by this specific date? Is a much better way of looking at it, because now you're going to be more thoughtful and meaningful with the time that you put towards the music project that you want to work at. So for example, if you wanted to be better at mixing, and this is a very condensed version of a system that I would teach students, taught hundreds of students this system, and they would often come in these coaching calls. I want to get better at mixing. How do I get better at mixing? And I would ask them like, well, what exactly are you doing? Well, I mix this one song all month long. And I just would be like, wait. You're spending 1 month on one song? And they'd be like, yeah, I'm trying to get it right, trying to get perfect. And I'm like, you are never going to make the right strides if you're only mixing one song per month. And I empathize with this because this is something I had to overcome myself. So to help many students, I would say, for example, okay, go and find 4 or 5 multi-tracks online for free. You can find forums, people have them. Find 4 or 5 that are decent, that will be good enough for this project. And then what you're going to do is you're going to mix prep, mix, and recall on different days. Now, this system is going to be, again, a very condensed system of how you will want to see like even crazier results. But basically, let's say Monday through Friday are the only days that you can do music, and you only have 2 hours on those days. You've done the social media stuff, you've tracked your time, you know when your most opportune times are. So on Monday, you're going to mix prep for 2 hours. You get 2 of those songs done. Tuesday, you mix prep and you get those done. And then guess what? On Wednesday, you're going to mix 1 song. You give yourself 2 hours to mix 1 song. And you can do that Thursday and Friday. And then when Monday, the following week shows up, you're going to mix another song. When you're mixing these songs on each one of those days, you are going to bounce to a folder, and you're not going to listen to it. You're just going to bounce it and leave it as is, and you're going to move on. on the following week, or after you're done mixing all the songs and projects, however many songs you decide to do, you're going to spend one day for those 2 hours listening to those songs and making notes as you're listening to them. Then you're going to give yourself one day off, come back, and then do the recalls on the next day. And if that takes you 1, 2, or 3 days, whatever it takes, but you only give yourself the 1 to 2 hours of time. You do the recalls and you bounce it again and you leave it alone, right? I mean, you do the recalls, give yourself a day, take notes, and then you leave it alone. Then you're going to take the notes from each song, from the first set of notes to your recall notes, and you're going to see if there's any similarities, anything that you need to work on, anything that, like bass is too low, bass is too low. Okay, it seems like your balancing of bass might not be where it needs to be. So what you're going to do now is you're going to, pick a couple of records that you absolutely love the sound of the things that are issues for you. And then you're going to look up the producers and the mixers, and you're going to create podcast playlists, YouTube video playlists of interviews. And for the next week or two, you are just going to watch videos on what they have to say about how they get a better bass, how to look at bass, how to think at bass or guitars, whatever it is. You're just going to consume information now. You're not worried about the mixes you just did. Then after you spend a week or two taking in as much as you can, you're going to do the whole system again, but hopefully you saved as for after the mix prep session was done, so you don't have to start at that step anymore, More time. And then you're going to do the whole thing again. You're going to mix for 2 hours, bounce, mix for 2 hours, bounce, do the whole thing for each song, go back, listen to notes, and you're going to repeat this process until you're slowly getting fast enough to make quick decisions and trust your instincts on getting these mixes to sound better. And you're going to then spend time to go actually work on the things that you need to work on, not the things that you think you need to work on. Because what so many mixers do is they fixate on I want the best bass sound. Bass doesn't sound great on its own when it's on a great record. Bass is the culmination of how everything in the production is working to help support the bass, but then also the mid-range. Everything works together. It's all one piece of a huge puzzle. It's not just one puzzle that is a huge piece. It's the opposite. And so many mixers, when they're wanting to make more time for mixing, they just want to mix more, thinking that mixing more without intent is going to give them the outcome they desire. That's not how it works. It's like an athlete. If an athlete is having issues with their free throws, they're not just going to keep playing a match or a game expecting that as they play these games, their free throws will just get better. No, they're practicing their free throws nonstop to where the point it becomes muscle memory and they trust their instinct on where they have to get the ball. That is literally what we're doing, is we're training our gut to know that doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound right. I need to adjust this. I need to adjust that. And from doing all this practice and research, you start getting more comfortable with your mixing decisions. And before you know it, you start having way more exponential growth than other mixers around you. And you're utilizing less time than most of them, because you're using it wisely. And it blows people's minds when they would go through this system and they'd be like, again, this is a very condensed version of my system. And within 3 months, they would just be they would be completely different mixers. And they'd be like, it is insane how much better I have become in 3 months because of the system. And I'm like, yes, because you knew what you needed to work on instead of just blindly mixing a song, hoping that the next one would be better than the last, not knowing where exactly the problems were, right? And this could be guitar playing, this can be songwriting. If you're a producer who wants to write songs, but the type of bands that you want to work with, you don't have any songs, then you need to learn how to write in that style and do the same thing. Give yourself 2 hours to write in that style, and that's it. Print the song, leave it alone. And when I say a song, it doesn't need to be anything more than an intro, a verse, a chorus, and that's it. So many people who want to get into producing also, they're stuck at the notion of they have to do, intro, verse, chorus, re-intro, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, bridge, outro, breakdown, etc. you don't have to do all that. You just need to get used to creating a system of like, okay, I know how to write good transitions now. Like if a band comes to me and they're stuck on they have a great verse and chorus, but they don't know how to get those two parts together, you're like, oh, I've literally done this 100 times. Like, let me hear it. Okay, here are like 3 ideas we can try. What feels best? Like, because that's your job as a producer, is to help the band figure out their way to the finish line and create a product that the masses will enjoy. And these are just, again, small examples of how to make more time for music without taking like 5 to 10 hour blocks, which I think is a huge misconception. Is when people think about making more time for music, they're thinking like, I need hours upon hours to catch up. You don't. If you have at least 1 to 2 solid hours Monday through Friday, by taking the right approach on how you want to get things done, you can have so much exponential growth and results than other people who spend all day, who spend a month mixing a song. Now, with that same advice I gave you earlier, imagine trying to make more time for music, but only working on 1 song each month. That's what I call the sandbox mix that my buddy Charlie coined. And it's like when you have this mix that all you do is you play in it and you never actually get anything done, and you don't learn anything because you're not getting anything done. You're not getting feedback. You're just, stuck in the sandbox. So hopefully this episode gives you a good starting point on how to find more time to do music, because working in music sucks and finding time to do more music stuff sucks. But hopefully with what we talked about in this episode, you'll be able to, accomplish your goals of being a better mixer, producer, songwriter, whatever it may be. So thanks for listening, my friends, and I'll catch you on the next episode.